Ever feel like cinematic deja vu has numbed your movie nights? Buckle up, because the 15 war and crime juggernauts we're about to roll out aren't just classics. They're ticking celluloid grenades destined to blow your expectations sky high. From foxholes drenched in napalm to back alley conspiracies dripping with moral acid, these 1970s powerhouses will jolt even the most seasoned cinephile. Ready to storm the front lines of forgotten greatness? Let's dive in. Apocalypse Now, 1979. The Mekong River becomes a neon nightmare in Francis Ford Coppola's feverish retelling of Heart of Darkness. Captain Willard's hush-hush mission to terminate with extreme prejudice. The renegade Colonel Kurtz turns into a psychedelic odyssey where morality melts like jungle heat. Martin Sheen's tortured introspection, Marlon Brando's shadow-swamped gravitas, and a cast rounded out by Robert Duvall, who improvised that "I love the smell of napalm" bravado, make every frame pulse. Production costs ballooned past $31 million after a typhoon leveled sets, and Sheen suffered a heart attack, forcing Coppola to mortgage his vineyard. The director himself suffered a nervous breakdown during filming, once threatening suicide. "We were in the jungle. There were too many of us. We had access to too much money, too much equipment, and little by little we went insane," Coppola later confessed at Cannes. What most viewers don't know is that Sheen was actually drunk during the opening hotel room scene. That's real blood on the mirrors after he shattered one with his fist. The crew kept filming. And Brando? He showed up 88 pounds overweight, completely bald, and hadn't read a word of the script. Coppola had to film him in shadow, improvise dialogue, and pay him $1 million up front. That's not movie magic. That's cinematic survival. Critics were shell-shocked, yet mesmerized, and the film's eventual $150 million haul crowned it the decade's most audacious war epic. Over 40 years later, cinephiles still debate whether the Redux or Final Cut better captures its hallucinatory heart. Proof that this masterpiece refuses to fade quietly into the tree line. If you only watch one Vietnam War film, this should be it. Just prepare yourself for a journey that might leave you as shell-shocked as the characters themselves. The Deer Hunter, 1978. Michael Cimino's three-act aria moves from Pennsylvania steel mills to the Russian roulette dens of Saigon, exposing how conflict ricochets through friendship and faith. Robert De Niro's stoic Michael, Christopher Walken's haunted Nick, and Meryl Streep's tender Linda fuse into a tragic triangle that earned 9 Oscar nominations and 5 wins, including Best Picture. Shot on an escalated $15 million budget, the production smuggled cameras into real Thai gambling dives to capture the roulette scene's sweat-slick authenticity. What many don't know is that Cimino shot over 1.3 million feet of film, enough to make a 50-hour movie. And the editing process was so intense that one editor quit mid-production. Early test audiences walked out, rattled by brutality, yet word of mouth elevated the film to 49 million domestic grosses. The infamous Russian roulette scenes sparked controversy, with many veterans claiming such games never occurred in Vietnam. Nevertheless, the film's emotional truth transcends factual disputes. It captures the psychological devastation of war like few others. Today it remains a bittersweet hymn to brotherhood's endurance and collapse amid the shrapnel of war. Patton, 1970. George C. Scott doesn't merely portray General George S. Patton, he incarnates him, swagger stick cracking against history's podium. Franklin J. Schaffner's 70mm canvas chronicles North Africa to the Rhine, while Jerry Goldsmith's trumpet echo mimics distant cavalry charges. With a then hefty $12 million spend, producers filmed on Spanish desserts cheap standing for Tunisia, recycling Battle of the Bulge tanks to slash costs. Scott famously refused his Best Actor Oscar, declaring acting a craft, not a competition, which only burnished the film's rebellious aura. What's even more remarkable is that Scott never watched the finished film, refusing to see himself on screen. The opening speech, delivered in front of a massive American flag, wasn't even in the original script. Writer Francis Ford Coppola added it the night before filming began, creating one of cinema's most iconic openings. Strategists still screen it at military academies, dissecting Patton's audacity as both blueprint and cautionary tale. If you think war films are just about explosions, this one will show you the complex psychology behind military genius. A Bridge Too Far, 1777. Richard Attenborough assembles one of the densest star formations in war cinema, Connery, Caine, Redford, Hackman, only to parachute them into Operation Market Garden's doomed ambition. Real Royal Engineers rebuilt Nijmegen Bridge, while veterans advised on the Arnhem Drop, spiking authenticity for a colossal $22 million budget. The production used more military vehicles than the actual operation itself, with over 4,000 uniforms made from scratch to clothe the massive cast. When filming the parachute jump scenes, the production team used real paratroopers who had to jump multiple times to get enough footage, one of the largest airdrops since World War II itself. Although U.S. critics balked at its somber pacing, European audiences embraced its candor, pushing worldwide grosses past $50 million. Unlike most war films of the era, it dared to show the Allies making catastrophic mistakes, a bold move just 3 decades after the war. The takeaway? Even heroes can drown in bureaucracy, and no bridge is worth a river of squandered lives. Cross of Iron, 1977. Sam Peckinpah abandons heroic myth to wallow in mud with a German platoon reeling on the Eastern Front. James Coburn's Sergeant Steiner spars against Maximilian Schell's aristocratic Prussian officer in a primal duel of class and survival. Filmed in fractious Yugoslavia with real T-34 tanks scrounged from local depots, the production hemorrhaged funds, forcing Peckinpah to pawn equipment to keep cameras rolling. The legendary director's alcoholism reached crisis levels during production, with crew members hiding bottles of vodka around the set to keep him functioning. Despite these troubles, Peckinpah's trademark slow-motion violence reached new heights of stylized brutality. Its nihilistic message rattled 1970s audiences, yet earned praise from Orson Welles, who called it the most honest anti-war statement ever filmed. The film was largely ignored in America, but became a hit in Germany, proving that sometimes the most uncomfortable truths find their audience eventually. If you crave trench-level authenticity, this one clips you like shrapnel and leaves you questioning what heroism really means in the meat grinder of modern warfare. Soldier of Orange, 1977. Before RoboCop or Basic Instinct, Paul Verhoeven crafted this propulsive Dutch epic tracing 6 Leiden University friends through occupation, resistance, and betrayal. Rutger Hauer's charismatic Eric and Jeroen Krabbe's tormented Goose anchor a narrative leaping from clandestine flights to Queen Wilhelmina's London exile. With Dutch studios unable to foot the $5 million bill, 36 corporations invested, making it the Netherlands' most expensive film then. The gamble paid off. It outsold Star Wars domestically, and remains required viewing in Dutch high school history curricula. What makes this film special is how it portrays the moral complexity of occupation, showing collaborators, resistance fighters, and those caught in between with equal humanity. Ever wonder where Verhoeven got that unflinching eye for violence that later defined RoboCop and Starship Troopers? Right here. As a child during the Nazi occupation, young Paul witnessed dogfights overhead and dead bodies in the streets. "I saw a plane crash into a house behind my primary school," he once revealed. Those images burn into a child's mind. That authenticity bleeds into every frame. The film's infamous beach scene, where students race naked into the North Sea, symbolizes their last moment of innocence before war transforms them forever. The scene wasn't just artistic flourish. It actually happened in Verhoeven's university days, making this film intensely autobiographical. The rotating restaurant set, where Eric meets with his German handler, was an engineering marvel that took 20% of the entire budget to construct. Verhoeven would later bring this same unflinching eye to Hollywood, but never again with such personal investment. This isn't just a war film. It's a coming-of-age story where adulthood arrives at gunpoint, proof that swagger and scholarship can share the same uniform. If you think you know Verhoeven from his Hollywood work, prepare to meet the filmmaker before Hollywood sanitized his vision. Catch 22, 1970. Mike Nichols translates Joseph Heller's looping satire into a surreal carousel where survival hinges on proving you're insane, yet doing so proves you're sane enough to fly. Alan Arkin's bewildered Yossarian anchors a who's who ensemble, Orson Welles, John Voight, Bob Newhart. Filmed on a full-scale A-20 bomber fleet, ranch purchased for $11 million. Shoot schedules spiraled after a Mediterranean storm battered sets, mirroring the novel's chaotic spirit. The production assembled the largest collection of B-25 Mitchell bombers since World War II, with 17 authentic aircraft, a feat that would be impossible today, given how rare these planes have become. While box office returns barely matched costs, the film's manic logic seeped into pop culture. Catch-22 now defines any no-win scenario in our lexicon. Critics initially dismissed it as inferior to the novel, but time has been kind to this adaptation. Its fragmented narrative style was simply ahead of its time. Watch how Nichols uses repetition and circular logic to create a world where reason itself is the first casualty. Mental gymnastics never felt so deadly. Tora, 1970. This bi-national epic crosscuts Japanese planning rooms and American slip-ups to restage Pearl Harbor with clinical precision. Directors Richard Fleischer, Kinji Fukasaku, and Toshio Masuda choreographed dogfights using 30 replica Zeros, and dive bombers rebuilt atop Harvard trainers. Costs soared to $25 million, astronomical in 1970. Yet the gamble secured an Oscar for visual effects and minted $77 million globally. What makes this film unique is its balanced perspective, showing both American and Japanese viewpoints with equal respect. Originally, Akira Kurosawa was set to direct the Japanese segments, but left the project after 2 years of preparation, citing creative differences. The film's most spectacular sequence, the attack itself, used real explosives that were so powerful they damaged nearby buildings at Pearl Harbor Naval Base. No CGI here, folks, just old-school practical effects that still hold up today. Its crisp objectivity makes pundits hail it as the definitive case study in intelligence failure, because hindsight is 20/20, but film stock is forever. Chinatown, 1974. Roman Polanski trades bullets for water rights, thrusting Jack Nicholson's private eye into a sun-bleached noir where Los Angeles' thirst births murder. Robert Towne's Serpentine script cost Paramount $500,000, peanuts compared to today's standards. Yet, Frank Lloyd Wright inspired sets and Jerry Goldsmith's mournful trumpet gilled every frame. Studio brass initially wanted a happy ending. Polanski insisted on tragedy, and history sided with him. In fact, Goldsmith's haunting score was composed in just 10 days after the original music was rejected. Proving sometimes brilliance emerges under pressure, Polanski's own traumatic past informed the film's unflinching ending, creating one of cinema's most devastating final lines. "Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown." Earning $29 million on a $6 million budget and nabbing 11 Oscar nods, Chinatown remains the gold standard for urban corruption tales, bleaker than any battlefield. Its influence extends beyond cinema. The film exposed many Angelenos to their city's shady water politics for the first time. Every neo-noir since stands in its shadow, and few have matched its perfect fusion of style and substance. Serpico, 1973. Al Pacino's shaggy undercover cop wages a one-man crusade against NYPD graft in Sidney Lumet's gritty procedural. Filmed chronologically so Pacino could track Serpico's disillusion, the production hopscotched 104 New York locations in 52 days, often stealing shots guerrilla style. Budgeted at $3 million, it grossed 10 times that, empowering real-life whistleblower Frank Serpico to lecture on integrity worldwide. Pacino's commitment was legendary. He insisted on living in a similar apartment to Serpico's, and even went on patrol with NYPD officers to absorb their mindset. The real Serpico visited the set, but found it too emotionally overwhelming to stay long. The film's grainy, documentary-like aesthetic influenced countless police dramas that followed. Before Serpico, corrupt cops were usually secondary villains. This film dared to make systemic corruption the central antagonist. If courage had a face and an unruly beard, this film framed it. When you watch it, remember, this wasn't fiction. It was Thursday for Frank Serpico. The Godfather, 1972. Francis Ford Coppola transforms Mario Puzo's pulp bestseller into Shakespearean thunder, conjuring chiaroscuro baptism hits and horsehead ultimatums. Paramount forked out $6 million after nearly firing Coppola twice, to craft 1940s New York on soundstages thick with orange-hued nostalgia. Marlon Brando's offbeat audition, stuffing tissues in his cheeks, birthed a performance that clawed $250 million worldwide and forever rewrote gangster cinema's rulebook. Studio executives originally wanted Ernest Borgnine or Danny Thomas for Don Corleone, and they fought against casting Al Pacino as Michael, preferring Robert Redford or Ryan O'Neal. Just imagine how different film history would be. Here's the kicker most people don't know. The studio hated Coppola's work so much that they assembled a shadow crew, ready to take over when he was fired. The pressure was so intense that Coppola vomited from stress one morning before shooting. And that horsehead scene, that was a real horsehead obtained from a dog food factory. The actor's horrified reaction, not acting. The film's shadowy cinematography wasn't just an artistic choice. It was born of necessity when Paramount slashed the budget, forcing Gordon Willis to hide cheap set designs in darkness. This limitation created the film's signature look, proving sometimes constraints create masterpieces. The studio executives initially couldn't even see Brando's face in the dailies and demanded brighter lighting. Willis refused, earning him the nickname the Prince of Darkness. Many scenes were improvised, including Clemenza's famous "leave the gun, take the cannoli" line, the cat in Brando's opening scene, a stray Coppola found on the lot that Brando befriended between takes, and Pacino. He was so convinced he'd be fired that he got drunk most nights, certain each day would be his last on set. Leave the gun, take the masterpiece, and thank the cinema gods the studio didn't get their way. The Godfather Part II, 1974. Lightning struck twice as Coppola interwove Michael Corleone's icy consolidation with Vito's immigrant ascent, pioneering the non-linear sequel-prequel hybrid. Doubling down with a $13 million budget, production recreated 1910's Lower East Side on Dominican Avenue, draping laundry lines across Caribbean humidity. Critics initially balked at its dark introspection. Today, many crown it superior to the original, bolstered by 6 Oscars, including Best Picture, a franchise first. De Niro learned Sicilian dialect for the role and gained 40 pounds to play the younger Vito, while Pacino's haunting portrayal shows a soul calcifying in real time. The parallel narratives create a devastating portrait of the American dream's corruption across generations. The film's Lake Tahoe scenes were actually shot at the Fleur de Lac estate on Lake Tahoe's California side, the same location where, years later, parts of The Godfather Part III would be filmed. Watch how Coppola uses cold blues for Michael's timeline and warm sepias for Vito's. Visual storytelling at its finest. Family loyalty was never so lethal, and cinema history was never the same. Mean Streets, 1973. Martin Scorsese's kinetic baptism drenches Little Italy in red neon and Catholic guilt as Harvey Keitel's Charlie wrestles sin, while corralling Robert De Niro's live wire Johnny Boy. Shot on Gorilla 16mm for $500,000, with personal loans from Roger Corman refused because Marty wouldn't add an obligatory nude scene. Its handheld urgency forged Scorsese's signature. Box office lagged, but critics swooned, and today its opening, Be My Baby, tracking shot is taught in every film school 101. Scorsese used his own apartment for filming and cast his parents as extras. His mother even cooked meals for the crew. The director insisted on shooting in actual Little Italy locations rather than sets, giving the film its unmistakable authenticity. De Niro's entrance, shot in slow motion as he struts into a bar to Jumping Jack Flash, established a template for character introductions that filmmakers still copy today. The fighting scenes were partially improvised, with real punches occasionally landed. Scorsese's Catholic upbringing infuses every frame with guilt and redemption themes that would define his career. Sometimes revolution starts on the street corner, and sometimes it starts with a camera in the hands of a 30-year-old director with everything to prove. Dog Day Afternoon, 1975. Sonny Wartzik only wanted cash for his lover's surgery, and wound up hijacking 1970s America's TVs. Lumet's real-time heist confines us to a Brooklyn bank, sweltering under August heat and public scrutiny. Al Pacino's Attica, improv, ignited crowds on set and at home, while John Cazale's soft-spoken Sal punctured hearts. With a lean $3.5 million budget yielding $56 million, the film proved that social commentary could wear a balaclava and still make bank. Based on a true story, the real Sonny watched the film from prison and claimed it was only 30% accurate. Though he praised Pacino's performance, the film was shot in linear sequence over just 21 days in the same Brooklyn neighborhood where the actual robbery occurred. Lumet's documentary-like approach extended to casting real television news staff as themselves and using extras who lived in the neighborhood. He banned air conditioning on set despite filming during a heat wave, ensuring the sweat-drenched performances were genuine. The film's sympathetic portrayal of a gay protagonist was groundbreaking for 1975, making this not just a heist film, but a landmark in LGBTQ+ representation in mainstream cinema. Dirty Harry, 1971. Clint Eastwood's steely inspector Harry Callahan chased a Scorpio sniper through San Francisco's fog, launching modern action tropes and culture war debates in 1.44 caliber shot. Don Siegel's no-frills direction exploited real locations, Golden Gate Park, Kezar Stadium, keeping spending to $4 million and reaping $36 million domestic. Critics accused it of fascist undertones. Audiences cheered the Make My Day pre-echo. Frank Sinatra was originally cast as Harry, but dropped out due to a hand injury, making way for Eastwood's career-defining role. The film's villain was loosely based on the real-life Zodiac killer, who was still at large when filming began. Eastwood performed most of his own stunts, including the famous bridge scene where Harry jumps onto a moving school bus. The actor also contributed to the character's development, suggesting the iconic .44 Magnum as Harry's weapon of choice. Whether you see a vigilante fantasy or a Law and Order lament, the film's crosshairs still fix our collective conscience. It spawned 4 sequels and countless imitators, but none matched the original's raw power. And there you have it. 15 incendiary war and crime titans that proved the 1970s was cinema's wild frontier, where courage, corruption, and chaos duked it out frame by frame. Which title detonated your mind the hardest? Drop your pick in the comments. We read every single one like classified intel. Smash that like button if you felt the blast. Tap subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another covert screening of hidden brilliance on Golden Age classics. Until the next reel, keep those projectors humming, keep the popcorn loaded, and remember, the past isn't dead. It's just waiting in the dark for its next midnight revival.